Hey everybody, welcome to the Prep Life podcast. This is your founder and CEO of Glam Bikini, Amy Enger, and I am joined by my fabulous co-host, Lee Marie Jones. How's it going?
Going good. It is going good. I'm recording for the first time from my future home gym in the basement.
Ooh, your future home gym. And I see your high rocks. And so
Oh
I
yeah.
wanted you to share with everybody how'd you do? And where'd you
I
go?
Thank you. I did hit my goal, and I told myself not to make a time goal because it was my first solo race, but of course I did. And so my goal was to do the race in 90 minutes, and I beat my time by 29 seconds.
Woohoo!
Very, very happy with that.
That's great.
So already in prep for Chicago in about 5.5 weeks.
And that one was where? This
This
one?
last one was in Boston.
Ooh,
hmm
okay.
So much fun. So
Very cool. Well, we've got a lot to talk about when it comes to peptides and the triple threat of the hot topic that everyone's talking about. And if they're not, they probably should be if they're in the bodybuilding world or the fitness and weight loss industry. And it's best known as Retta, but Retatrutide. So it's the triple threat when it comes to the obesity drug landscape coming up. And we will explain that. And we're going to talk about the past kind of different ways of these fat loss drugs, like with Ozempic and, you know, so semaglutide, the technical word for it, and then Tirzepatide, and now this new retatrutide, and kind of comparing and contrasting what that's doing for the industry, how that's evolving. This was prompted by I was talking with one of my friends that's a nurse practitioner that she's pretty big in the health and fitness space in terms of just like the lifestyle wellness part of it. And she is currently prescribing retatrutide, and she had shown me this study. And I'm a nerd about things, and so it really caught my attention when it was talking about fatty liver disease and how people that just changed their lifestyle 4% saw a turnaround in just diet, and then 84% that were on the Retta actually resolved the fatty liver disease. So I just think we'll definitely get into the weeds of the biology, try to make it as just easy to understand as possible. I'm definitely not the expert, so I want to disclaim all things when it comes to that. I'm not a doctor. We are not, prescribing anything. We are not recommending anything. We need you to refer to your health practitioner when it comes to these things. And the important thing too to note is that this is in the second phase of clinical trials, so it is not yet FDA approved. So it still needs a complete phase three. Is there anything I'm missing on that disclaimer?
I don't think so. And I think it's important to say too, like on this podcast, I would say that we are professionals in the bodybuilding industry. We are coaches, we are paid coaches, we have competed, you've been a judge. Like we are, so like our take on the bodybuilding industry, I do feel like you have a lot of authority when you're talking about that, but we don't have medical expertise or letters behind our name. So we're not prescribing or recommending it. Honestly, just by giving you the information, I don't think we need to recommend anything. You guys listening, our audience listening to this, you guys are looking for ways to improve your health, improve your fitness, improve your preps, and your competitive edge always. So you're always going to look for information. We just want to give you the information and our opinions. Don't take our opinions as facts or anything like that.
Yes, always refer to your medical practitioner. So let's talk about the players. So the first one, semaglutide, it sold, a lot of people hear about it as Ozempic or Wegovy. It's a GLP-1 receptor antagonist, and it mimics glucagon. So just like the peptide, it reduces appetite, it slows gastric emptying, and it influences your central appetite circuits. So it's big, robust, kind of meaningful contribution is that it just cancels out the food noise, and that's through the slow digestion and things like that. So, do you want to take tirzepatide?
Yes, so tirzepatide, it's marketed as Mounjaro for diabetes and Zepbound for weight loss. So that is a dual agonist that targets both GLP-1 and GIP receptors. So glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptide. I don't know if I said that right.
Yep.
So in the SURMOUNT and related trials, tirzepatide produced larger average percent body weight losses than semaglutide's earlier trials. So it kind of upped the game a little bit. So top doses giving mean reductions around the high teens to low 20s in the percentage of the weight loss at long time points.
Yeah, and something to think about here is that our target market, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, when it comes to tirzepatide, it is an anti-inflammatory component, like with the brain and things like that. So people that are in perimenopause really benefit from this because it does bring it down inflammation. If you have any sort of inflammatory response or autoimmune, it's definitely good for that. We had Jason Theobald. You can reference that whole spiel that he did on that. But when we're talking Reta, so Retatrutide, it's a triple antagonist. So it has the GLP-1 that semaglutide does. It has the GIP that tirzepatide has, and then it has the GCGR, so the glucagon receptor, and that's a glucagon leg, and it's what the researchers are the most excited about. So we'll kind of talk about some of the studies and things like that. We're going to talk about how the trials and all that went. Um, I just wanted to kind of point out, so we'll put these in the show notes for sure, but just so you all can kind of see the charts, especially on this one particular, it's got like a chart of showing how much, like 80% versus like the less than 1% or 4% in the fatty liver trials. It kind of shows that in a chart. And then it also shows an adipose tissue. So after 48 weeks, of just the diet and exercise. And then with the Reta, it was a 2.5% reduction in adipose tissue, so abdominal fat tissue. And then when you went to the Reta in the 48 weeks and you incorporated that, it was a 48% reduction in the adipose tissue in the gut. So, or in the, like your
Abdominal area.
abdominal region. Yes. So do you want to take part two, just kind of like what the trials kind of showed, and then we can move on from there.
Yeah, so kind of like we already touched on semaglutide, the 2.4 milligram Wegovy dose, it showed roughly double-digit percent weight losses in the trials, meaningful, durable reductions that revolutionized the farm. I don't even know how to say that word, but revolutionized fat loss basically in the obese population. So that's what they're talking about, people that need to lose a lot of weight. So high dose semaglutide programs are pushing those numbers even higher in later trials. So the higher the doses, obviously. So then tirzepatides reported larger losses. So in multiple doses, average weight losses of around 15 to 21% have been observed, outperforming semaglutide in comparable populations. So testing the same population. And then retatrutide's phase 2 and follow-up reports in the 48-week trial are the highest retatrutide doses produced mean weight losses in the low to mid 20% range, roughly 18% at 24 weeks on the drug, and then 24% at 48 weeks on the drug.
Yeah, and that's just pure weight loss.
Weight loss.
So, you know, just kind of bottom line, semaglutide, GLP-1, it's clinically meaningful for weight loss. And then tirzepatide, GLP-1 plus GIP, larger average weight loss. And then semaglutide head to head. And then retatrutide, GLP-1, GIP, and glucagon. Early phase data show even larger mean weight loss at some doses and time points, and the safety of the long term is still being collected. So why add the glucagon? So that's the key component here that we're adding that's so revolutionary. In what I understand of it, just in my basic, I'll get into the weeds a little bit, but just essentially what it's adding is, for the first phase, like with semaglutide, it's the appetite control. The second phase, like decreasing inflammation. And then when we get into this third phase with the glucagon,
Mhm.
we're getting into metabolism and mitochondria, energy production, and lipolysis. So we're actually, you know, our energy intake, when we talk about that and the energy expenditure, our regular just thermogenesis, our metabolism and all of that, we have those two factors, right? So you have your calories in, you have your calories out. And so the GLP-1, it's primarily just trying to reduce your intake. So it's trying to cut your caloric intake. It's not really, you know, doing anything much more than that is just calorie restriction. So what we found, especially in obese populations that aren't prioritizing protein, they're losing a lot of muscle. So they have a blunted appetite, they're not hungry, they forget to eat. Americans already don't prioritize protein.
Mhm.
So if you're a bodybuilder, obviously that's a priority for you. You're wanting to get, at least a gram per pound of body weight of protein. And so when you're on these GLP-1s, you have to be a little bit careful about making sure that at least you're getting in your protein because, I've heard from a lot of people, they forget to eat. It's crazy. Like sometimes they experience nausea,
Mhm.
diarrhea, upset stomach because of how that works on your digestive tract. So, keeping that in mind, it's not really the kind of weight loss that we want to see in particular in the bodybuilding world, right? Now, we we can utilize that and still force ourselves to kind of eat the protein, maybe in like a sustainable way where you're having like a protein drink or something like very light on the stomach so that even when you're not hungry, you're still like maintaining your muscle mass. Um, but then when we go to the GIP co-antagonism, it appears to complement the GLP-1 by enhancing our insulotropic effects. So this can help us preserve muscle tissue in the Tirzepatide because, for one thing, it's helping you produce more insulin in the pancreas. So it's making you more insulin sensitive. So if you've had blood sugar dysregulation, you have high blood sugars, this is a great product for that in terms of just helping you, even if you're a high stress person or you're in perimenopause, so your inflammation's up because estrogen's down and you're basically cortisol is higher, so your blood sugars aren't regulating properly. This part, that GIP, will help you kind of regulate that. And then it also helps you to maintain the muscle mass as well. And then when we're putting all of this in combination with the glucagon receptor, we're activating a different effect. So we're stimulating a pathway that can increase your energy expenditure. So when you're thinking about calories in versus calories out, we were kind of just addressing the calories in, like
Mhm.
with the semaglutide, it's like the appetite control. The tirzepatide is helping you with blood sugar regulation. So even when you're intaking food, you're processing it better. And now when we go into the energy side of this expenditure and we're helping that part, that's where we're just seeing, we're raising our resting energy expenditure. So it's crazy to say, but if you're on Retta, you could be sitting on the couch and you could actually be burning body fat because of this heptatic mechanism. How it mobilizes substances and affects all of these different things and it targets the energy side of things in addition to the intake, if that makes sense. And I don't know if I explained that well, but I don't know if you have anything to add on that. I kind of just gave a mouthful.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And like the point of the energy intake, I love the point about the type of weight loss we want as competitors. We are trying to get as lean as possible while preserving our body mass, our muscle mass. So as bodybuilders, I always come back to this. You told me one time, it is not a weight loss competition. It is not about getting up on stage as skinny as possible. It is getting up on stage showing off the muscle that you've built. And that is what they're looking for, the bodybuilding, right? So you don't just want to be taking in as little food as possible. But that's why the factor of the retatrutide increasing energy expenditure could be really productive, I feel like, or a positive thing for prep, because that's what we're always trying to control, that balance between energy expenditure and energy intake, with like gradually increasing cardio and things like that. If this would benefit that and maybe help someone not have to do 3 hours of cardio a day, I think that could be a really positive thing,
Yeah.
possibly.
Yeah. And just to put that last piece of the human like the physiological side of it,
Mhm.
after we're able to sustain that increased energy expenditure after glycogen, I cannot talk right now, glycagon receptor activation,
Mhm.
with these mechanisms like heptic futyl cycling and heptokine cycling, those effects will basically it's going to give you acute metabolic effects. Those are very clear. We don't know what the long-term sustained effects on that in a therapeutic context will look like just because it is so new. So that's going to require some confirmation. Do you want to talk about any safety or caveats
Mhm.
that are included in this?
I think the biggest one that we should not overlook is what you said before. It is not FDA approved. It's still in phase 2. So everything that we know now is like conditional. Okay. So they don't know all the side effects. They don't know the long-term side effects. And that's definitely something that we want to be thinking of with long-term health. It does, glucagon raises glucose acutely. So that's expected. Glucagon is a counter-regulatory hormone. So triple agonists must be balanced to avoid sustained hyperglycemia. So you don't want to go over the top with that. You want to monitor glucose, insulin responses closely. You want to obviously be working with a professional that is going to help you monitor that. It can have benefits, but with most things, there's a balance. And I think the typical response of bodybuilders is we go to the extreme. So if something's good, more of it we think is going to be better. And I know that as a coach and a competitor, I also see this in myself. If a coach tells me to do 20 minutes of cardio, I think, oh, maybe 30 minutes is better, when it's not necessarily that. So having someone that is watching you and watching, the effects of this on your body. Also, point 3 is GI side effects and tolerability are common across all of these drugs. So you don't know what kind of an effect this is going to have on your gut, on possibly nausea, maybe vomiting, maybe disrupting your digestive system. And that's a really, really big factor of bikini competitors. We are always watching for our gut health, our digestion. When we get really, really lean, you can tell if you're slightly bloated, if you're inflamed in your gut at all, if you're having gut issues. That's something that you don't want to be dealing with on peak week or on stage at all, because that will show up if there's any sort of inflammation, or, if your gut is disturbed at all or slowed down. So you want to watch things like that. And then long-term outcomes. So cardiovascular events, cancer risk, bone health, psychiatric effects, weight regain. I know that's something that we deal with after prep anyways, the psychological effects, the weight regain, things like that. I think you need to think about long-term. Is this a temporary thing you're going to use? Is it a long-term thing? And all of that can be individual, and you can talk to your, healthcare provider about that. But it's just factors that we need to consider, especially as bodybuilders. I think on one side of it, we could be a really good audience for this, because we do track everything so carefully. So we are going to hit our proteins, we are going to hit our calories, we're going to monitor all these health things all the time. So using something like this, we might be able to actually get all the benefits, but still maintain our muscle mass and all of those things. But then on the other side of it, we go to the extreme. So if there's something available to us that we can take a little bit of, a little bit more, might not necessarily always be better, if that makes sense.
And keeping that in mind, most of the time these are recommended for people that are obese,
Mm-hmm.
like 30% body fat or higher, which no competitor is going to land in that area. So the dosing too and again, I am not a medical provider, but work with your practitioner on this. Microdosing might be the better answer for you, like the minimal dose possible.
Mhm.
And I know that Jason Theobald talked about microdosing with the Tirzepatide. And I just think that that's something to keep in mind, that you definitely want to be working with them and with your biofeedback and how your body is changing, if you're losing weight too rapidly and things like that. So this is something that definitely needs to be, a group effort and not something that you want to like get on the black market or anything like that. So with all those things in mind, there is no magic bullet. However, it does seem like this one could be, but in just the long-term health of your body and outcomes, and these are expensive. Like there's a price ticket. There's going to be some time where you're gonna maybe have to go off of them and you can't be on them forever. Like you need to get the foundational pieces of the puzzle together and maybe utilize this as just something that could minorly enhance as a supplemental to a healthy lifestyle where you have the basics, where you're tracking your food, you're, working on your sleep, you're getting your water intake, you're getting your protein, you're doing your exercise. All of those things should be there first as the foundation so that if something were to happen with this drug, if it were to get pulled off the market, if it doesn't pass phase 3, whatever it may be, maybe it's, like it's not the end all be all when it comes to this. So we need those foundational, habits so that something like this you could maybe just utilize if you're in a sticking point or you're in a spot like, I just feel for people that just are morbidly obese and they just can't control that food noise. So I think that some of this is really good for those people to help them with that foundational piece, right? To kind of help them stay on their diet. And I can see this for competitors too. Like when we get in a caloric deficit and we get really like we're trying to get really lean, it's easy to get really hungry and cheat on your diet and eat extra. Or after a show, you're ghrelin super high and your leptin's really low and your mechanisms aren't regulated and hormones and things like that. So some of this could maybe help a little bit, but at the end of the day, you really need those foundational things. And I can't preach that enough. But that's really all I've got to say about that in terms of these types of drug therapies. Did you have anything to add, like closing thoughts?
Yes, I have one closing thought, and you mentioned it before when you said something about the black market. Guys, this is a prescripted drug. Like you need a prescription for these drugs. You need to be talking to a healthcare professional. If you follow a fitness influencer and they're trying to sell you something that you don't need a prescription for, you can just click on their link and buy. It's not going to work,
Yeah.
or it's not drug tested and you should not be taking it. Don't go to Target and buy the GLP-1 gummies. Okay. It's a waste of your money. You need to be talking to a healthcare professional because of all the things that we listed and all the cautions too. You should be talking to a professional to see if it's the right thing for you anyways. So that's just my
Hmm.
caution. It does need a prescription. So don't go follow your favorite influencer and click on their link and buy it online. Go to a professional.
Yes. And we will link all of the peer-reviewed articles that we have kind of taken from these pieces of, literature from PubMed and things like that. And we've kind of shared in a layman's terms as best as possible some of the words we struggled with. So we apologize in advance, um, but yeah, go ahead and look at those in the show notes. If you feel it in your heart, please leave us a rating and review. Please subscribe to this channel if you're watching it on YouTube. Please leave in the comments if you have any thoughts, if you are watching on YouTube. And if you are listening on your favorite platform, please tag us on your story on Instagram, share it with a friend. Let them know you're listening so we can get the word out there. You can find us on Instagram at Prep Life Podcast and at Glam Girl Bikini. And you can apply for coaching with Lee Marie or myself at glamgirlbikini.com and hit the get started button. Thanks for listening, guys.